We're recording. Okay. Before we get started, I just want to share a brief history of this webinar workshop. It's been co-developed with our presenters, Lupe Morales, who is a carer and a dementia advocate and the developer of the workbook that I emailed everyone earlier in the week. There's also Anne Peach, who is the person living with dementia, and Sarah J, who is a consumer engagement coordinator for Dementia Australia. And we have been working with them closely for over 6 months to create this fantastic workshop. Also joining us to facilitate the event is Marianne, Edwin, and Isabel. So thank you all so much for joining and helping. So we are part of the ADNET Early to Mid-Career Research Accelerator Group, which aims to support and advocate for early and mid-career Australian dementia researchers. And the aim of today's workshop is to help show dementia researchers and those with lived experience of dementia what we can do as researchers to build a sustainable program of engagement with the community. We will hear from Anne and Sarah about their learnings from partnering with people with lived experience of dementia. Then Lupe will take us on board through the Engage model for community engagement framework, and then we'll break out into groups to discuss the application of the model to our own experience with research on involving people with dementia. Going through the workbooks. And then we'll regroup and share our findings and open the floor to discussion. So we would really appreciate having everybody's insights and involvement, and also just to share their perspectives. Before we get into it, next slide, Marianne. I'd like to sort of explain the basis for this webinar workshop. This was developed in response to the National Dementia Action Plan on co-design, with Action 8 highlighting improved dementia data, maximizing the impact of dementia research, and promote innovation. So this action point highlights people with lived experience of dementia have the opportunity to be involved and participate in research, and that the research outputs are regularly reported so they can see what improvements have been made. So drawing on from Action 8, this workshop explores practical strategies for embedding voices of people with lived experience of dementia into all stages of dementia research by fostering authentic, ongoing partnerships with people with lived experience of dementia, so that they can research that we conduct as EMCRs and senior researchers can be more inclusive, impactful, and aligned with real-world needs. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to hand over the next session to Sarah to get started.
Hi, I'll just give a brief introduction of myself and Anne, and then we've actually got a recording of a conversation that Anne and I had last week, and very unfortunately is unable to be with us here today, but was still very keen to be involved. So I'll just start by saying that I work for Dementia Australia. I have a research background, but my role is as the consumer engagement coordinator for research. And among other things, one of the main bits of my role is to help connect researchers with people with a lived experience of dementia, and to collaborate, partner, get involved in research. The main event actually is Anne Peach. Anne is, as Mona mentioned, a dementia advocate. She's living with dementia and has been a dementia advocate for the past 12 or 13 years. Very active in all avenues of advocacy, but really passionate about research. I'll mention that Anne is the current chair of the Dementia Australia Advisory Committee, which is a committee made up entirely of people living with dementia that provides strategic guidance and direction to the Dementia Australia board. So it's wonderful to have be working with Anne. And as I said, she's really disappointed she couldn't be here in person. But I'll leave you to our conversation. I think Marianne, if you press play, off we go. Anne, can you talk to us about why it's important for researchers to involve people with a living experience of dementia in their research?
Yes, certainly, Sarah, and thanks very much for having me here talking to you today from the point of view of a person living with dementia. It's important. I find it really rewarding to be involved in the dementia research that's genuine, and it's wonderful. But hopefully, if you're getting involved, that the researcher will know a bit about dementia. It's no good coming to do dementia research if you don't know anything at all about dementia. And if you involve somebody with a lived experience in research, it shows that you value them and that your research is going to be meaningful for them and for their families and carers and other people with dementia. And you need to show that the commitment is meaningful and for the research to be of value. It's not just to advance your career, it's really that you are going to do something that is going to be helpful to me or other people living with dementia. It's important to get to know the person living with dementia and form a respectful and authentic relationship. It's a two-way relationship, and it's based on mutual respect for each other's knowledge and skills. The person living with dementia is going to respect you, the researcher, and the research you're undertaking. And you, as a researcher, should respect the person with dementia and understand that they've had a previous life and previous career that might also be useful in your research into dementia.
And so, Anne, I know you've been involved in lots of different research projects over lots of years. Can you just give some examples of things you've done or ways that researchers can involve people living with dementia or who have a living experience of dementia in their work?
Yes, I've been really fortunate. I've met so many wonderful researchers and continued the relationships well after the research is finished. And often they'll come and ask if I'm interested in being involved in further things or future things, or if I can advise somebody who might be useful and helpful to them. But it's always lovely to be knowing what they're up to, even when you're not working with them. And so that relationship is really important. And I really have found it valuable. Most research I do is only into things that I think are going to be helpful and useful for people living with dementia. And generally, you get to know the really great scientists and researchers out there, and I just am in awe of them. They're fabulous.
And so you talked then about researchers that you've had ongoing relationships with, and so can you talk now a bit about why a researcher should bother spending time to get to know the person living with dementia when they're looking to involve them? What's important from your perspective?
From my perspective, if the researcher gets to know me, then they'll know how I can help them with the research. But they also have to know how they can help me to help them. It might be that I need written copies, hard copies, and have them given to me with plenty of time to actually read and report on. I can help them with dementia-friendly language, and I can help them with advertising material and be involved throughout the whole of the research proposal. A lot of researchers have actually said how beneficial it is for them as a researcher, because it's changed their view of and broadened their understanding of dementia and living with dementia. And it's often challenged their stereotypes.
And so I guess it's not just a direct benefit to their research or their project, but a benefit to them as a person as well, deepens their understanding of of dementia and what it means to be or for a person
Yeah.
living with dementia. And I guess also that I guess the more you get to know someone, it builds trust, and it can kind of feel less of like a transactional relationship. It feels really, really genuine. And as you said, when they might come to you about a different project, it sort of feels like a natural thing that you might do,
Yeah.
because you have got this genuine relationship or partnership when it comes to their research.
And often they've been in touch, you know, during the year just to keep me updated on what they're doing and what they're publishing, and that's, I find, really really respectful too. And of course, it's a two-way thing, that relationship and trust, and it's a symbiotic relationship because we work as a team. They get to know the best way to support me, and everybody else is different. So they'll ask, if they ask me how the things I need, they'll also be asking other people living with dementia what they might need to help get the best out of them in relationship to their research too.
Yeah, that's great. And so can you give some, because I know there's oftentimes researchers might be unsure about the best ways to go about effective and meaningful involvement. So what would be some of your tips or advice that you could give researchers when it comes to effective and meaningful involvement?
Well, I guess I've alluded to some of the things already. It's really getting to know the person and get to know what they need, what their limitations are, and you know, just the type of person that you're dealing with, so that you know that perhaps the morning's the best time to be dealing with them. Don't deal with somebody who get tired in the afternoon or have meetings in the afternoon. If you show an interest in explain how the research is really going to help benefit the person living with dementia and their family, you know, connect with the person and connect with their situation as a whole. If you don't know anyone with a lived experience, it can be difficult, but then you've got Dementia Australia can help, as can Step Up for Dementia. But the most important things are to have respect, because these people are giving you an insight into a fairly delicate area of their lives. But we are the ones that know what it's like to be living with dementia. So it's really important to use the correct terminology. You know, don't use dementia sufferers or demented. There are guidelines you can follow if you want help with this. Or even, you know, I don't mind being asked prior to getting involved what terminology I like, because you can't please everybody all the time. You know, some people like being called an advocate, some people don't. You know, it's just be flexible. And using people with a lived experience and families and carers can assist your research group. Use our skills. Maybe that we've got living experience of dementia, have research backgrounds, or other attributes that are going to add to your research as well. Build into your proposal some funds to acknowledge your appreciation to the person living with dementia. Again, it shows you value and acknowledge that person's input. Discuss with the person how best to utilise their knowledge and skills. I've already alluded to this before, I think, but I mention it again. Hard copies of review. Are they okay with email documents? You might need to use larger print, larger fonts in your emails. Simple things can make it easier for me to contribute. I've said about giving plenty of time to actually look through the research papers and comment on them, because it does take me and others I know much longer to go through things and actually absorb what's being written. And you can invite people to, I've been invited to conferences and things where I've actually co-presented with the researcher on their research work. And I think that shows two things. It shows how I'm valued by the research person, but it's also showing the audience the value of having somebody with a lived experience. And I think it's great to keep in touch. As I said before, it's terrific. I find it really rewarding to know what the researchers that I've been involved with get up to and all the wonderful things that they do. And I think that's really, really rewarding. I like knowing what they're doing, and I think they like letting me know what they're keeping up to doing too, because then I know that you actually feel like you've built a friendship, and that is such a wonderful thing, that I can get to know people with those amazing brains doing all this amazing research and feel that I've been part of their work. It's just something I find personally very rewarding and wonderful. And I think I'm very lucky to have that opportunity. And I know other people who are involved in research with dementia think the same too. It's just things have changed so much in the last few years that I've been involved with dementia research, and we're at a really great stage now where I'm actually seen as part of the team and not just the person that's been added on to make it tick the boxes, that you're actually involving somebody with dementia in your co-design and things. So keep on doing what you're doing. It's terrific. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Anne. I think if I can just, I mean, you made so many great points there. One of I think a key one, isn't it, is getting to know the person, so you can really have that genuine, authentic relationship. And I think then that's when you're more likely to see the benefits, not only for research, but for yourself as a person, as a researcher, over the longer term, because you've established, and as you said, sometimes a friendship that sort of goes beyond just the research. And I guess the other thing I wanted to highlight was when you get to know someone, you can find out the best ways to support them. And I think something we often say at Dementia Australia is, if you know one person living with dementia, then you know one person living with dementia. So something that works for Anne, or some of the things you've listed here, might not work for someone else. And the only way to find out is to ask.
It certainly is. And we're, I think we're all very different, but we all have similar needs when we're doing research. But it's just a matter of how you actually get that information from us, and to make it easy for us to take part in the research. But I've had very positive interactions, and just think it's wonderful to be involved.
Well, the researchers are very lucky to have you involved, Anne. Thank you for joining us, and we'll leave it there. Great, thank you. Thank you for that, and for accommodating the slightly different delivery of the recording, but I think you'll agree it was great to be able to have Anne involved and her wonderful insights. I'm now going to hand over to Lupe, who put together this great workbook for us, and she's going to talk you through the Engage model for community engagement. Thanks, Lupe.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was an excellent presentation. And I'm so grateful to Anne, because a lot of the examples that you shared are really in this Engage model. So I'm Lupe Morales. I come to you with feet on the ground in the United States, in the state of California. And I'm so happy to be here and to be able to work with these researchers and research teams and friends. One of the things I do is I'm a co-chair of a organization called the Alzheimer's Clinical Trials Consortium. I'm a research participant, but I'm also the primary caregiver to my mom, who was diagnosed with dementia in 2019. So I come to you because more and more here in the States, but I think that, you know, other countries are far ahead of us, is that researchers are beginning to ask here in the States, how do we get involved? What do we need to do? What's a model or steps that we could follow to have meaningful relationships with community, with people with lived experience? And so in my research, I kind of was looking for something stripped down, something basic, so that in terms of steps that can help you and workable ways to apply these steps. So if you go to the next slide, please. The framework of the Engage model in your workbooks, we sent you the full article that was done by, was a 12-year study done by Dr. Crystal Glover, and she was at the University of Rush in Chicago in the States. And what I liked about it is that the Engage model, it's an acronym, and we'll go through the acronym and what it means, but that it is like, these are the basics that you need to have. And again, what I like about this model is that you can add to it. You can't subtract from it, but you could definitely add to it as you look into engaging people with lived experience in different communities and different cultural communities. And so, so let's go through it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how how the workbook is organized as a way to guide you and or your research team to get there, and to and it can be applied either before you set out your proposal, or even when you have engaged groups, everything is funded. You can always go back to it to rethink and to evaluate how engagement is working for you, and where it can be improved. All right. So I talked about the Engage model. Again, it's an acronym. There are 5 steps, 5 essential pillars that Dr. Glover talks about. And the first one is N for network. And it's exactly what Anne mentioned, basically. It's building authentic relationships. And then also the next one is give first. Many times, and what I have experienced with researchers is that they go in with research right away. They go in with a request for participation or enrollment without even understanding the community, what their needs are, or who they are, or see it as a relationship at all. So the network, again, is building genuine relationships, and we'll talk more about some best practices around that. Give first, don't assume, and don't ask for enrollment right away. You really have to get to know the population that you're working with, that you want to work with. And many times researchers go in just with their request, and it doesn't feel good when you're part of the community. You're advocating, number 3, you're advocating for research. You're communicating the importance of your research in an accessible way. I mean, Anne has been in research, and I have been, so I can understand kind of the lingo used, but you want to avoid that with community members, or bring up their capacity and build skills so that they better understand what you're talking about, but you really want to make it accessible. The next step is number 4, another G, and it is give back. Oftentimes, researchers that I have experienced, but more or less so in these days, researchers stop at advocating for research. They forget about the giving back. And the way that young people talk about it here in the States is that the researchers ghost us as lived experience, that, you know, they've gotten what they wanted and they're gone. Giving back really looks at and has the researcher review and ensure what and how the research benefits the community itself. And 5, the last one is an E for the Engage, is evaluate. And it's important to continuously assess and improve your engagement efforts. It's not static. As you grow with all these steps, you're going to go further and deeper and begin to develop a whole network and relationship with a community or community service providers that will help you engage with populations you may not have access to. So in the introduction, what I usually ask, and what's really important for part of the networking process, is to understand and to be able to explain why is community engagement important to you and your research. It's essential and helpful for me to know why you're in this business. You know, what in your personal life caused you to be a researcher in this particular subject matter. And then that invites me to trust and to also let you know why I'm involved in community engagement and what's my why, you know, and why I think this is important and why I want to help you. Next slide, please. All right, so let's take each component a little deeper. The way that your workbook is organized is that each step is explained. We talk about some best practices or what that step looks like in action. And then the third piece in your workbook is an activity or a reflection activity to get you and your team thinking about how you do this and what strategies you can use. So again, what I talked about is network is building authentic relationships. We know, and if you didn't know, that means just not meeting people, but building trust and mutual respect. Exactly what Anne said. And some of the best practices around the networking piece is being present, attending community meetings and events. And that means you listening and learning and watching, who are both, if you're in community meetings or fairs, etc., you know, events in the community, that you're looking for who is the said leader who's speaking, but also to see who are the informal leaders around that leader, because they're essential too. And you want to focus your networking and get to know them. And it doesn't have to be necessarily at that event. You want to meet them, shake their hand, or whatever is customary. But you want to be able to keep their name and get a hold of them later to further network and to ask questions. So another best practice around this is to listen first. You're asking open-ended questions, right? You're learning about them. You want to understand not only the community leaders' concerns, but you want access to conversations with folks in the community that trust that leader, right? And that means that the leader relationship is really important. So understanding the concerns before introduction to research. Research is almost back of mind. It's a learning opportunity for you and for the person you're networking with. The third best practice around networking is identifying key stakeholders, partners that trust with trusted leadership, so that you can have access to the populations they serve. They are the gatekeepers in many ways, because and they take their jobs very seriously because they know us. So it's really important that you partner with them, ask them, learn from them. And again, you want to focus not only on the key leaders, but also the informal leaders. And I think the only other thing I would add to this piece is that sending just a coordinator or a low-level staff to be able to network is not acceptable. Leader to leader, you have to be visible to be able to meet the community where they are, and especially get that trust from leadership so that they can give you access to the communities they serve and the services they provide to these folks with lived experience. And finally, one of the best practices, be transparent. Clearly communicate your role, your why, and your goals. And a reflective activity here under networking would be to write down 3 community groups or leaders that you want to connect with. And then what steps would you take to maintain these connections and to begin to get your thought process and reflection? Next slide, please. All right, this is the second step, give first. We talked a little bit about it, and you're more than giving first, you're cultivating trust and that whole concept of reciprocity that is essential in many cultures. So give before asking anyone to foster trust, to get enrolled, and to be a part of your research. You're looking at a long-term relationship beyond your research, and that's how you want to address them and learn from them at first. Ways in which to give first. So offer an educational workshop or a resource for free. Cultivate a resource sheet that they don't have, maybe for more information about Alzheimer's, brain health, etc. Whatever that community wants and needs. The second is support community events or initiatives. Now, I always see teams either purchase or sponsor a table, and you don't see them leave that table throughout an event. It really requires that you get up off the table. Yes, leave it manned or woman, right? But you want to get out and find out why people are at this event and why they trust this organization that is sponsoring this event, and get to know, the behind the scenes piece. Provide useful health information or services. That's another way to give, whether it's a screening or a test or some questions, or even a service to do a quick cognitive screening, and offer that for free, or get a team together to do that. You can also volunteer or contribute in a non-research way. So, for example, I am working with a researcher. They don't even know that they're already applying an engaged model. And what they do is they have a service day once a month, and they've selected an organization that does food distribution for elderly. And so once a month, the whole team goes out there. And little did they know that other volunteers watched them, other staff people watched them, and that they were already being asked who they were and why they were there. And once they started getting to know them, is to really actually provide some curriculum development, so that as they did their educational workshops or health education, you participate in that development of curriculum and help people learn about that. So the activity around giving first, I would ask you in reflection, is to identify one way you can give back to the community before you request something of them. How will this build trust and demonstrate reciprocity? Next slide. All right, the next letter in the engage model is advocate for research and bridging those gaps. So in the communities, there are some communities that may be hesitant to hear from you as a researcher due to their past harms, or even lack of understanding or myths around it. Advocacy makes research accessible, relevant, and trustworthy. And even bringing a research participant or someone else like an Anne that you've been working with you to see that there is a partnership is very, very important, to see both researchers and research participants and or someone living with experience engaged in a conversation with you and that community that you want to have more access to, that you want to build a longer term relationship. So some of the strategies here is make sure, in terms of advocating for research, is to be sure that you are jargon free in the language. One of the wonderful things about my involvement over time was that I was invited to go to research conferences for the first time ever. And I got to tell you, I felt like I was drinking from a water hose because I couldn't understand the language. And later on, we developed some orientations before I'd go to research conferences, which really helped. And then eventually I became a little bit more familiar and felt comfortable. Another strategy would be highlight community benefits for participation. And you may not know or have a specific view on what the benefits could be to them, but it's really important as you develop that relationship with a community-based agency that has access to people with living experience, that they help you articulate and to find benefits that are meaningful for the communities that they serve. Third, address historical mistrust with honesty and accountability. It's really important not to Not to say, well, those were those times and these are new times. You just don't build trust that way. Listen, make sure that they understand that you understand their misgivings, and to be honest as much as possible. And utilize again other people with lived experience that you know, or research participants that can talk to some of that and can alleviate some of the myths. For partner with community ambassadors to co-lead, and that's what I mentioned. Like, would be wonderful to have access to someone like an Anne. That really says a lot. And community members want to hear from people that have experienced this before, if you can. If not, you want to work with that ambassador from the organization as much as possible, and that means you build trust from it. So an activity around advocating for research might be drafting a community-friendly explanation, not very long, of your research, and have that community-based agency ambassador or leader help you with the language. Look at some of the things that they distribute also, and find examples that can bring your points or bring your explanation home. The next question would be, in terms of reflection, how would you present it to a skeptical audience? Again, there's a variety of ways now that we know that it's important that you acknowledge any skepticism and kind of work it through. And maybe not in one event, over time, because the more they see you, the more you're visible, the more trust that they have. Just like that, those folks that donated food or helped as volunteers to donate food for that agency. The more they saw them, the more they trusted them. Next slide. Giving back. All right. So this is a step that sometimes is forgotten among research, giving back. So once you've done this work, sustaining a meaningful engagement requires that it not be one-sided, that you take the information and run. You want to look at it long-term development of a relationship. So communities should feel the benefits, or should hear about the benefits at least. So giving back always strengthens that long-term collaboration. So some of the ways you give back: so share your study results in an accessible format, a forum, an infograph, or videos, right? You can work with an agency to help you do that. 2 would be recognize community contributions. Always really important to acknowledge them, whether you do any kind of write-up or summary. Get their opinions, get their quotes of things that are important. To identify stipends that you can offer as honorariums to make people feel that you honor their time. And you know how important and valuable that is. You will also offer leadership roles. So if it's a short-term project that you want, and maybe you set up a small group to help you with it, who's the leader in this? Who do you contact first? How do we communicate to the other members of that group? 3, provide skills training or knowledge gained from research. Really important. So if you have learned something, even the trends are fine. How many people at the end were impacted, etc. So something that keeps that communication rolling and going, and making it mutually respectful, and then you invite them to give you feedback. And finally, support community-driven initiatives beyond the research. So again, you don't want to disappear, you want to stay present. And that does mean that how much time you put in there is very important, and the goals that you set, that they be reasonable for you in the beginning. So a reflective activity around giving back might be a question like, how will you ensure the research benefits the community? Right? Or list 3 concrete ways you want to give back to your study when your study is complete, again, or is in progress even, so to make sure you involve them throughout the process. Next slide. And then the final letter of the Engage model is really evaluate, evolving community engagement. So evaluation ensures that your engagement efforts are effective and sustainable. And some of the key questions you might want to ask in evaluating where you are, and it should be continuous throughout the processes. For example, a question around impact. Did your efforts build trust and increase participation? Again, you definitely want them engaged, but maybe not so much early on in enrollment, but just building that trust. The second is feedback. What did the community say about their experience? And if they had a good experience, or if the experience could have used an improvement, and to not be afraid of gathering that information. Third, again, improvement. What worked well, what didn't, what could be better? What would you eliminate next time based on the feedback that participants gave you? Important to acknowledge that the community engagement changed the process for the better. And then the fourth, sustainability. How will this relationship continue beyond the study? Why is it important for you to have those relationships beyond the study? Because you want to develop networks. You're going to possibly need the same population for referrals to an adjacent population or other communities that they're involved in or serve. And this is one way to get it. And Anne said it in the video for sure, that many times she's asked for other referrals. And so as you get to know folks in different communities, you'll get more referrals to different organizations and people with lived experience. So some activity around evaluation might be to develop a simple evaluation plan. Identify 3 engagement goals for your research. Determine how much you'll measure, or how you will measure success, whether it be surveys, questionnaires, or participant interviews. Plan how you collect and use the feedback, and let people know that they want to know where their contribution is going, especially when they take time to give you feedback. Next slide. All right, so these are not my closing thoughts per se. We're gonna go into small groups in a minute, but I just wanted to reiterate that some of the key things around this model are that engagement with trust and reciprocity, make research accessible and community driven, and ensure researchers give back and sustain engagement beyond the project, initiative, or study that you're working on. So what we're going to do next is Edwin is going to help us get into small groups. And I believe that we're going to be going into separate rooms over the next 20 minutes. And in each group, there will be a facilitator. And what we're going to do is, if you have your workbook in front of you, what we're going to do is use the appendix page that has all the activity around the Engage model that we described. And we're going to kind of go through that, and hopefully you have some examples. If not, we're going to work through some of those issues, and you'll be able to ask questions then. So Edwin, am I on it?
So I'm happy to put everyone to the breakout rooms. I'll hang back in the main room just in case there's any issues. So feel free to come back to the main room. But let me try to split you guys up into breakout rooms now.
And Lupe, just before we dive into breakout rooms, just clarifying that you're chairing the discussion after the breakout rooms have completed, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, just double checking. I am here on hand if you need any help with it.
Okay, right,
Great.
Got it. Thank you so much, Marianne. That slipped my mind, but yeah, we're good.
All right, I'll now open up the rooms. So Mona, are you able to go into room 3 maybe? Or do I have to put you there?
Can you put
Let
me
me see if
there?
I can, yeah, let me try to move you.
Or I can join. What room do
Oh,
you
if you
want me
can
in?
join, maybe join.
Room 3?
Yes, that's one with Isabel. Yep. Okay, and Eunice, are you there? Hey, Isabel.
Hello.
Hello. I noticed, I think all your participants left or? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we only had
Uh,
one.
oh, you only had one. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm glad you stayed back. I just checked into Sarah. I wonder if we
Yeah.
can message them and see how they're going.
Yeah,
Yes. So I wanted to ask to run groups to begin to talk about what came up in your groups and what was important. Well, what did you find surprising or even difficult? And so let me go to Edwin. Did you have a group?
no, I didn't.
You didn't. Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. Let me go to the next one then. Isabella.
Yes, we had a small group with limited time, so we went straight to the heart of what was important to the researcher in our group, and they were very keen on understanding how better to evaluate engagement, and that it's an often overlooked area of the co-design process. And yeah, we talked a little about the investment in engagement and how it's being built into almost every grant proposal, but that's very much focused at the beginning stage, and we really wanted to think of ways to close the loop. And Muna shared some experiences of how she just informally evaluates consumer engagement in her research. And while it's not a formal or necessarily reported part of her work, it's a key pillar, and she uses it to inform future practice. Did I miss anything, Muna?
Lovely summary. Well said.
Awesome. Let's see, who else? Did Sarah have a group?
We had a small group. And I think both people in my group were not hugely experienced in the area of involving people with a lived experience of dementia in their research. And so we sort of had a more general sort of discussion. We talked about a few things. One of the ones being time, and the time it takes to build genuine trust and relationships, and how that might fit in with the very short timeframes and timelines that researchers are often up against in terms of submitting grant applications and being pulled in all sorts of other directions. And I guess one of the main points that I made, which I don't know if is terribly helpful, but reality is that if you've got a grant application due in 5 weeks, that's really not that feasible to connect, build trust, have a genuine connection, and do all of the things that you really need to do to get the real benefit about involving people. And so that my advice would be to make those connections before you need to make those connections, because then you're laying the groundwork for all the great research that is to come. So we talked a bit about that. We also talked about just in general about involving people and managing expectations about the roles and the involvement that they can have. I mean, there are lots of different ways you can involve people with the lived experience in your research, and bigger isn't always better, especially if you're not that experienced, or depending on the type of work. You're better off, particularly if you're new to this, I think, thinking of a really meaningful way that someone can be involved that might not be a really sort of have a major sort of influence on your project, but has a significant influence on your project, and just doing that really well, making that relationship really work, and really supporting them, and evaluating that process, and then building from there for the next project or something, but being really clear, no matter what size of the role or what the role is, that everyone's on the same page about what kind of the scope of the role is, and what everyone's hoping to get from the involvement.
Very good. Yes. It really is beyond the 9 to 5 when you're beginning. Just like networking for your PhDs or looking for mentors, it's done not in the 9 to 5, but in the crevices of the week and weekends, that is important. And those build long-term relationships for sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Who else is out there? Marianne, did you have a group?
Yeah, I did. I had quite a big group of researchers, and all very passionate about the importance of involving the community in their work. And I think in terms of the most pertinent points, we had someone share with us a story of how much they had to push to actually involve the community at a really early stage of their research career. So even at that sort of doctoral level, to be able to involve communities because they felt it was important. And again, you know, stories sort of shared that particularly resonated. We all had some level of lived experience of our own that drove us to be involved in this and to do what we do. But it was about how we would feel if our own family members were involved in research and whether we would want them to be involved in the way that we had. And so that is a driver for us to improve the experiences of people being involved in our research. And that's why we want to involve community members to make our research processes better effectively. But I think a really key theme of what we kind of spoke about was about the challenges to involvement. And these were kind of two spaces. So firstly, feeling supported by, if you are an early career researcher, feeling supported by your direct supervisors and mentors to actually take those steps to involve the community in your research. And the feeling of having to push back against that can be really quite demoralizing, but it's so worth it in the end. It's so worth actually pushing and advocating for that involvement. But also the fact that we are all making this effort to involve people at the earlier stages of our work, such as in preparing ethics documentation or conducting research workshops in aged care facilities and so on. But we can actually sometimes come up against gatekeeping behaviours from other people who are involved in the research in some way. There might be care staff at the home, or there may be people that are on the research ethics committee, for example, against the way that we would like to more closely involve people with more moderate or advanced dementia in the work that we do. So again, that kind of resonates with some of the other stuff that Anne was saying in the webinar about the importance of adapting the way that we involve people to accommodate different aspects of living with dementia, because again, everybody is different. But ethics committees are not necessarily in a position to actually recognize that. And so sometimes despite your best efforts to produce a thoughtfully designed study that involves people living with dementia and their families, it can sometimes come up against these challenges and barriers. So just wanted to kind of share that because that resonated with quite a lot of people in our group, especially those of us that are currently working on applications to ethics committees at the minute.
Wow. I hadn't thought about or framed the issue that is so important. How would you want your loved one to be incorporated? And that totally changes the perspective. I love that. I'm going to remember that and use that as well. All right, Hannah or Mona, did you have a group?
I was in a group with Isabel. Lupe, did you have a group?
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. I did. So there were 3 of us in the group, and like others have mentioned already, the ethics committee or ethics group is a tough one to get through and to use examples for sure. They didn't have so much other examples of proposals working through, so we worked through one of my scenarios, and the scenario was the researcher I'm working with on here in the States, and that they didn't even realize they were in the middle of the engage process already with the community, because they engaged a nonprofit as volunteers and participated in monthly food donations for elderly. And so they already had this relationship. In a year, they brought me in to coordinate and develop a community advisory board. And I said, You're already doing this right now. You know, look at what you have. What other agencies are connected to this agency? And so we talked a little bit about that. But again, one of our participants did bring up the ethics piece again. And can you help us out with a little bit more information and or experiences that you and Marianne have had?
Yeah, I'm happy to contribute a couple of examples. So one of the examples that I gave in the breakout room, and again, if any of our other breakout room team want to contribute anything, so one of the examples that was given was about conducting a research workshop in a care facility, and the involvement of people with more advanced dementia, and the response of the care staff that were supporting the workshop to actually happen in the facility. Oh no, don't bring her in. She's gonna shout about things, and actually trying to communicate to the care staff that this was okay. If there were other things that people were saying, oh, you know, I need to go and feed my daughter now, she's only a baby, or something along those lines, you know, saying, hey, how can I help you with that? As opposed to the reactions of the care staff who were very quick to remove that person. So it's about being able to have that kind of adaptable process to maintain people's involvement and engagement. So that's kind of one example of that. And I shared an example of a research ethics committee process where I had somebody actually get really quite offended on the committee by the fact that I had formatted my information for family members and carers in the same way as I'd formatted the information for people living with dementia. So increased text spacing, more white space, larger fonts. They were like, why have you treated these two groups the same? That's really offensive. And I actually went back to my my community that I'd involved in developing these information sheets to make the case to the ethics committee to actually push back against that and say, actually, there's quite a number of people who are living in the community, who are in a caring role, who may be experiencing cognitive impairment, vision impairment, other comorbidities themselves. So we really pushed back against that. And another thing that the ethics committee were very unhappy about was the fact that we'd actually included photographs of ourselves as the researchers that people were going to be seeing. And again, this was a recommendation from the dementia advocates that we'd involved in the project, who were like, we want to see the faces of the people that we're going to be interacting with as part of the research. And the ethics committee were like, oh no, this is a safety risk to the researchers by putting your faces on these information sheets. So even though these were pictures that were already in the public domain, like you literally Google our names, and we have to have our names on the information sheets. You know,
Did you push back, Marianne?
Oh yeah. And again, you know, I involved the dementia advocates that were supporting the project to actually push back against that. So there were a bunch of different things that the ethics committee came back to us with, and we were like, actually, this is how we're going to respond to it, and we did that in dialogue with them.
Yeah. Okay, Lupe, do you have anything further to add? Any more gems, pearls of wisdom to share?
I just think that you have to start somewhere, and you have to give yourself a break, that it may not look perfect, that the engage model is the basic. These are the things that you have to have in order to do this well and successfully. You can add to it, but what I love about it also is that it's like a continuum. You don't necessarily have to start in one place. You can slide around and develop it over time. So make it simple, make it able to follow on a continuum, and just begin knowing that, you know, you may have to redo something, but improvement is always there for you to continue.
And I think this is
Thank
a
you.
perfect pitch for Dementia Australia and Sarah's hard work, because you don't know anywhere to start, just reach out to Sarah, because I know from my experience, you know, you're honestly a huge help and a great boost to, you know, start making sure I genuinely engage like authentically with dementia advocates and people with lived experience of dementia. So just a shout out to Dementia Australia and all of Sarah's hard work. So you might get the floodgates of email. Sorry, Sarah.
Fine. It's actually my job. I don't mind floods of emails, but yes, if you're struggling about where to start, how to connect with people, then just connect with me in the first instance, and we can take it from there.
All
Can
right.
I-
Well,
Can I just clarify, is that your email address will be sarahj@Dementia Australia, or?
Yeah, sarah.k@dementia.org.au. Yep.
and
Thank
also to the researchers who are a bit hesitant about joining. And my learning curve came from my lived experience partners. So don't hesitate, to reach out to them and even ask them, how do I meaningfully engage? I learned a lot from Anne. I also learned a lot from Jane Thompson, who couldn't be here today. They honestly helped me grow as a researcher and provide a really valuable feedback to make sure that I conduct myself, that embodies the engage framework as well. So don't reach out to tap into their wisdoms as well. They know a lot, they're passionate, and they've done multiple research projects. So anyone you connect with in the lived experience world, who are novice or not, just ask them, what do I need to do? And honestly, they'll give you an honest answer.
We're not trying to catch anybody out as an advocate myself. No one's going into it trying to like, you used the wrong word, or you haven't done that properly. It is a partnership, and I think some advocates as well are so happy to be able to contribute to people who don't have as much experience, and we are so happy to be involved from the ground up. So yeah, I don't think a lack of experience or having not connected with so many people should be a barrier to anybody.
Yeah. So a shout out also to Isabel, who's also been a great partner for me in my research. So get them involved from the start. Ask them what they think of your research idea. Get them to look over your proposal if they have capacity. Trust me, they will actually teach you a lot. Starting with what to label them as well, So that's really important too, making sure you have that accepted language. I think I want to give everyone, back some of their time. So I'll allow Marianne to sort of wrap up and provide some closing remarks and thank yous. Go ahead, Marianne.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. So as we conclude today's workshop, on behalf of ADNet, the EMCR Accelerator Group, and all of our participants today, I really want to first and foremost thank our presenters. So Lupe, Anne, Sarah, and all of our facilitators as well. So Isabella, Mona, and Sarah as well. All of our team for generously sharing experiences, time and effort as we put this workshop together. We're really grateful to all of you for donating your time and your expertise and your knowledge to share today. I'd also like to thank everyone who's here, who's attended. We could not run this workshop without your engagement and for you sharing your own experiences as well. Everyone that I've spoken to today has everyone has said, I've never regretted actually involving people and just to, make sure that I have taken these steps. So I hope this workshop has been helpful for that and a beneficial experience for everyone. And lastly, thank you to ADNet as well for continually supporting the EMCR Accelerator Group and in particular for making this workshop a reality. We have remunerated all of our lived experience representatives who've been involved today, and that was possible through that funding and support from ADNet. So thank you very much to them as well. A recording will be available soon on the EMCR Accelerator Group website. If you're not already signed up to our newsletter, then you'll be able to access the website through that as well. And a recording of this webinar will also be uploaded onto the ADNet YouTube channel. And so thank you so much to everybody for your participation today. It's been a wonderful experience for all of us to put this webinar together for you. We've all learned a lot from working with everyone on it, as we hope that you have also learned from taking part today. So have a wonderful day, everyone.
If you have any feedback, anyone has
Yes.
any feedback, please feel free to email myself, Isabel, Edwin, Lupe, Sarah, or Marianne. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone.